Well, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Lunch Update, our program that helps you stay curious, connected, informed, live and in real time. This conversation, like all of our Lunch Update programs, are made possible by our presenting sponsor, Perkins Coie, but we'd also like to make sure we thank our Accelerate sponsor, Baker Tilly, and our small and emerging sponsor, Easy Office Products. As always, we record these, and so if you see something that you would like to amplify, make sure others see, please go to our website at madisonbiz.com and find the link. But also, if for some reason, if you ever miss one of these, you can go back and watch it in a recorded fashion. Coming up, we'll be joined by American Family Insurance Board Chair Jack Salzwedel, who will discuss his 40-year career, almost 40-year career with American Family, a company whose legacy of innovation and unprecedented growth under his leadership is something I think we're all curious about, but also what does the future hold following his retirement as CEO? But first, here's some chamber updates. We're now accepting applications for our 9th annual Pressure Chamber Startup Initiative, which is presented by Michael Best and Friedrich. Once you apply, we then select a group to pitch locally. We use local investors to decide who gets to do that pitch live, and then we bring investors from around the country that are not on the coast to help us pick one winner. That winner then gets to join our delegation out to the Bay Area in the fall. We call it the Golden Suitcase. And then once you're out there, we then also curate a handful of other companies to take with us. It's been a tremendous success. In fact, every company that has won the local pitch has closed their round. And of the 30 plus companies that we've taken out, 35 or so companies we've taken out, they've raised more than $500 million. And so if your company is raising money today or thinking about raising money in the near future, I'd encourage you to apply. Deadline to apply is 8 a.m. on Monday, July 11th. You can go to madisonbiz.com/pressure chamber to learn more. Our 69th annual dinner is also coming up on October 18th at Monona Terrace. This is our largest and most impactful program of the year. And as always, it will sell out. If this year's icebreaker was any guide, which sold out 3 weeks before the actual event, annual dinner will sell very quickly. There is a desire to get back together, as we saw with annual dinner in 2021 and with Icebreaker in 2022. In fact, we've already sold 52% of our available tickets, even before opening registration, just through sponsorships. And if you're interested in a table or an individual ticket or sponsorship, again, we would encourage you and your team to reach out to reserve that spot sooner than later. And now to our guest and my friend. Jack Salzwedel is the board chair of American Family Insurance. He's followed in the footsteps of his father, who was an AmFam agent. He started his career with AmFam in 1983 as a claims adjuster, then became an agent, then worked in different leadership roles within sales, and then ultimately serving as CEO before retiring in 2021. He earned degrees in biology and business administration from his alma mater, Wartburg College in Iowa, where he recently received an honorary doctorate, and he also met his wife, Sarah, at the university. They have since established the Slife Institute for Social Work, Consultation, Research, and Training at the college, along with the Salzwedel Family Foundation. In addition to the Chamber Board, Jack also serves on boards in several industry and other nonprofit organizations, including the All Leopold Center, Property and Casual Insurance Association of America, the Insurance Institute, I guess that actually is, I guess it's different than the Insurance Association of America. So you have two of those industry ones. Badger Air Community Council, the WEDC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, the Chancellor's Advisory Board, and also was part of the selection committee for Chancellor Mnuchin, and also has a leadership position with as an advisor on the board of the La Follette School, and was a member of the G100 network. So Jack, welcome and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Zach. Good to be here and good to see you again.
Yeah, too. It's good to see you. As I think about your time, you and I have, I think people will get a sense as we go through the next 40 minutes or so. You and I have a close relationship. We're friends. I consider you a mentor, and I think we know a lot about each other in that sense. And so but as I think about what I observed over the last 9 years in the leadership role that you had as CEO, I kind of see 5 distinct buckets of change. Investment portfolio diversification, new technologies and digital transformations, innovation, both internally and externally, and how you view it, social impact, and then acquisitions were kind of these sort of 5 big buckets that I saw. And I'd like to unpack those individually, but I guess I'd want to start more broadly with you. When I think about that type of change, most companies try to do 1 or 2 of those. And sometimes they don't even do too well. And here I would argue you did 5 extraordinarily well. How was that possible? I mean, what was the thread that pulled all that together so that you could really, in less than a decade, drive that much change into an institution that's been around for 90 plus years?
Well, it's good to see you. First off, let me just say thank you, and I reciprocate in terms of the feelings towards you and the chamber. I mean, our chamber is in really great health right now, in large part because of your leadership and some of the things that I think we're going to talk about a little bit today. People give me a lot of credit for what's happened at AmFam, but the reality is there's so many people that have been a part of this journey, and it did start before my tenure as CEO with people like Dave Anderson and Harvey Pierce and others, and then folks like yourself who kind of are around the periphery of AmFam, who have been people that I've listened to and have learned from. One of the things that I think in your opening question, if I think about it a little bit, it does lead to some stuff you've talked about in the past. I go back. I think for us, the common thread is obviously the customer. It's making sure that the needs and the wants and the desires, the product, everything that customer needs is central to strategy and culture and everything that you're trying to do. So I think that ended up being our central thread. But I think there's another piece of that which gets to something you've talked about for a long, long time, and that's innovation. How do you take a legacy company with legacy technology, legacy culture, perhaps legacy workforce, and how do you move that forward? And so there's a common thread there, Zach, that I think it started with back when I was president for Dave Anderson when he was CEO, and it was a Harvard case study by a woman by the name of Rosabeth Moss Kanter, and it talks about mainstream and new stream. I talk about this a lot.
Yep.
And how do you take a mainstream company and how do you insert new stream activities into it so that your innovation gets kickstarted, so that your culture can change, all of that type of stuff. And if I look at that thread of that being probably the genesis for me back in 2006, 2007, 2008, when I first became president working for Dave Anderson, we were starting to talk about our mission, vision, values, a new strategic plan. All that stuff was not sexy. It was foundational for us, but it provided us the opportunity. Then when I became CEO in 2011, we had done a lot of this plowing of the earth early on and prepared the organization for some shifting, so that when it was time for us to do that, it became much easier to kind of make that happen. And then you move forward to things like you bringing Steve Case to Madison. I can't remember the exact year on that, but his book, The Third Wave, had a huge impact on me. That meeting him did. And then Eric Ries, The Lean Startup, that book coincides directly with mainstream, new stream, how you insert innovation, technology, new technology into legacy organizations. And so I'd say that thread that you've been talking about for so long was something that early on for us and for myself and the people I was working with was just critical in terms of us getting the organization ready for change, innovation, technology, all that came with that.
One of the things you said was culture, and I want to sort of dig into that a little bit because I appreciate the words you said about the work we did here, helping illuminate some of the path forward. I'd say the same to you, is that the first time I really heard someone lean into this idea of culture, I always thought about intersections of people mattered for innovation. I never really thought about it that intersections matter for culture as well. And then it was my first annual dinner. So 2013, you were one of the keynote speakers. I dug up, I went back to the microfiche and found the actual speech that you gave. But I want to quote something that you said, and then I want to talk about whether that's still true today, and then turn that to talking about culture from a DEI lens. But there's a quote you said, who's really responsible for culture? The obvious answer is we are, the current workforce, the current leadership. We are the culture, not some group of workers or leaders from the past. The current workforce and leadership is responsible every day for what we decide to do and what we decide not to do. If we don't like the culture, or if something about it is stopping us from moving forward in the direction we need to go, then we can't blame others who have gone before us. We need to change it. Is that still true today? Do you see that?
It is. Yeah, I really think it is. I think that the idea that we are the culture right now, we are the culture, and we are the culture that we deserve. And if we, if we want to lay back and create excuses for those who went before us, who said something couldn't happen or it shouldn't happen a certain way or whatever, then you're allowing the former, history to be, what's a barrier. I mean, we've had this saying that your history should be an inspiration. It shouldn't be a limitation. And I really believe that's right. And sometimes it takes a little bit to dig into that, to find those nuggets of inspiration in your history. But I think I would say they're there in most organizations, and sometimes you have to pull that out. But you gotta say that it's not, a decision that was made by a leader 5 years ago or 3 years ago or 10 years ago that's holding you back now, because we are the culture. And that gets to hiring, what your expectations are for hiring. You were talking earlier about some of the great talent you've been able to pull into the chamber. We've done the same at AmFam, and people like Peter Gunder. I know Peter, but Peter was somebody instrumental. Talisa Yancey from a marketing and advertising standpoint. I mean, these are folks that as you think about culture, as you think about morphing that culture, sometimes this insertion of people from the outside is really needed to help the organization gain momentum, not to shift the organization so abruptly that it creates problems. But there's people within the organization that really want transformation as well, who've been held back for whatever reason. And so sometimes, outside forces, this type of accountability around who the culture really is really needed. And I think that quote came partly because I was dealing at that time with some folks who, who I don't want to say were blaming former processes or whatever, but didn't actually believe that the culture they are responsible for the culture. And I think, I look around now and there's nobody who feels more responsible for the culture than the leadership at AmFam. And it's just great. It really is.
I was talking to Kevin Conroy yesterday, who obviously I'm sure the viewers know, but is the CEO of Exact Sciences. And in our conversation, we were talking about you. And one of the things that he talked about was your vision, not just for inside the company, but your vision for the outside. And I think that's an interesting observation, because I think a lot of leaders, particularly now, through the pandemic, that they really think about their current problems, which a lot of that is hiring, retention, remote work, culture, all the questions of where, sort of what's you called it, I think a couple of years ago at one of our events, you called it the next normal, right? So thinking about what is that next normal. But it seems to me that a lot of leaders, they think about culture and they think about the employee experience, but they do it almost by always focusing on the four corners of the business, forgetting that there's 24 hours in a day, not 8. And so they just think about the workday. And so when we think about DEI work, and certainly AmFam has done and led in many ways to be a model for how you can do that work. One of the things I've admired, and Kevin and I were both talking about, is your willingness to turn a lot of that outward too, and not just think about what's happening inside AmFam, but what's happening outside. You were a big part of the thinking through on the DHEY platform. You came and said, I'm putting together the CEO roundtable. I want it to grow and have structure around it. and we need a third party. Can that be the chamber? And that really became the genesis of thinking about how is this focused outward, not just inward. And we're seeing great success and progress in the DHEY platform. But I wonder what you say to business leaders who are trying to solve problems by only looking inward instead of also looking outward.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that in particular today, as we look at so many issues and misalignment of some of our political institutions, and who are there, in a lot of respects over the last 20 years to help business solve their issues, who really we're not seeing a lot of help there. I just think I think businesses have a responsibility to take up some of that slack that our political institutions just can't quite get to these days. And this idea that community investment, how a company, how an organization is viewed within the community, how they give back to the community, and how they tackle some of social issues that are going on. I think there's a way that businesses can do that and should do that. I really believe that community investment is connected to business strategy closely, far more closely than people have given it credit for in the past. And I think, again, this is one of those situations, I think, Zach, where you say, we did all these 5 things in concert. How did we do it? But we didn't set out to do all these 5 things together. A lot of these things happen as you get into something. You see, well, now technology, we need to be really tackling that. Well, now diversity, equity, inclusion, culture. So it wasn't like 10 years ago we said we got to put out these 5 things and get them all done. But as you start moving into getting momentum as an organization, you start seeing these things cropping up, and they then become a big piece of it. But culture and strategy are tied together. But one thing that we tried to work on culture a little bit in isolation of strategy early on, and the old Drucker saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I don't disagree with that, but I would flip that and say strategy can feed a good strategy, an effective strategy can feed a cultural revolution in your organization and change that culture dramatically. And I think that little twist goes from culture eats strategy being negative and pessimistic to strategy feeds culture, becomes much more positive. And I think that was a key for us going forward to link strategy and culture together. Yeah. Outward facing as well, not just within the 4 corners, but outward facing.
Right. I want to talk about those community investments in a second, but I do want to pause and say I do love that you just use the word revolution when talking about business. I mean, I've heard you use the disruption. I mean, the fact that you lean into words that would make business sometimes nervous, but you see the practical value of those words, and they don't have to be scary. So I just want to say I appreciate that you understand the value of those words and continue to use them as a senior leader in our community within industry. So I think about this community investment. So AmFam Field, right? Major investment, like a major community investment, stepping in. I think people lose sight of the fact that Miller had stepped away, right? And so that there was an opportunity to make sure that somebody of Wisconsin was sponsoring that and putting the name on it and had a linkage to it. The amphitheater at Summerfest, another major renovation, a major upgrade that allows that to continue to be a huge piece of tourism and entertainment. Here in Madison, the Spark Building, right? I mean, just a major investment that, both catalyzed and perpetuated the redevelopment of that corridor and showed companies that it's not just about housing in that corridor, but it was also about bringing workforce down to there. You even helped save the 4th of July fireworks in Milwaukee. So I think about those investments, and I heard you just say, why they're important and what the thinking of that was. So I get the civic minded, I get the marketing side of it, I get the promotional side of it. But I'm curious about the talent recruitment retention side of that. I mean, so talk about how those are beyond just marketing or civic investments to help build institutions, but how does that help with recruitment and retention of your team?
Yeah. There's, so there's branding that goes on. You've talked a little bit about that with all of those types of things. I would throw United Way and the work that we do in Madison, and so many of the business owners that are on this right now. I mean, the 100th centennial that they've got going on right now is another perfect example of giving back in the community. But it does get to employment brand as well. It gets to how a workforce views you as an employer. We've been saying over the last year or so, the war on talent is over and talent has won. So you better figure out as an organization what those differences are that you provide that are going to attract the workforce that you want, retain them, allow them to grow in their careers as well. And I think what we've done in terms of the enterprise, so all of those investments you were talking about go a long way, not just on the public facing brand for selling insurance and doing the business that we do, but they also dovetail in terms of our employment brand as well. And we're very strategic about that. We're you see probably a heavier emphasis on some of that branding in Wisconsin because the largest portion of our workforce is in the state. And so it's very tied to our business brand, which is our employment brand as well. So just it's really a key initiative for us to link to hanging on to the type of people that we want to have. We don't get it right all the time. I would say, look at sports marketing. Sports marketing has been a great thing for us. I think our marketing folks, when they look at the numbers, would say of all the, per dollar, it was the most expensive, but the American Family Field was most expensive sports marketing thing that we did, but it's also returned the greatest in terms of the awareness and impressions and visibility of the organization. But we've done some things, we purchased a building down in the downtown Milwaukee, probably about 9 months earlier than the pandemic. And if we had to do it over again, we would not have done that, I don't think. But we've had some home runs in there. I'll use that. We've had some home runs in there as well.
Certainly another home run was, Atlanta's soccer team, Atlanta United football team. Same kind of thing there. I mean, is that a market that's important?
You bet. That's an important market for us from an insurance standpoint, and an important market for us from drawing on a diverse employee base as well. So you bet. When we go in and we look at any of these partnerships, it's what does it do for us from a business standpoint, but what does it do for us from a workforce standpoint as well?
I know you. I know this because I know you, but. Do you ever consider sponsoring the Hotspurs? I mean, is that
I think that's a little. We do some global reinsurance, but I don't think it's enough to be able to provide enough money for the Hotspurs. I like where you're going with that.
That's right. Speaking, are you going to go see Man City at Lambeau Field? Or are you going up for?
I've got something and I can't go see that, but I'm excited that they're playing there for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, enough talking about Premier League soccer. So I alluded to it when you said revolution and I talked about disruption, but I guess I want to dig in a little bit on that innovation bucket. So I think when people think of insurance companies, they don't really think of risk taking. I mean, it's not something they go hand in hand. They're not really synonymous, but I think under your leadership and certainly under the leadership of the entire team, that you've taken some pretty big calculated risks. I mean, you've launched new technologies, you've leaned into emerging technologies that were, I would argue, some weren't even ready. I mean, that you were just testing new things. And then you started this new vehicle to be able to do that in a outside, I talked about innovation inside, but also on the outside. And that was American Family Ventures. So the venture arm of the company. And you've had some great success when that, I mean, you had Life 360, you had Ring, and some great exits that certainly paid dividends. But what were those early conversations like as a company that I think AmFam 20 years ago would not have been thinking that way. But so what were those conversations as you were trying to tackle culture and internal change? How did that happen? And, was it everybody was on board? Was there hesitation for companies that might be thinking about how can I tap into innovation outside my doors? How does that happen? How do you end up with an investment arm that's looking at risky ventures in the venture capital space?
Yeah, well, we have a great pro in Dan Reed, as you know, in that space, who's recognized nationally, globally as a just a tremendous director of that area. AmFam Ventures was something that Peter Gunder, who I've talked about a little bit. Peter came in 2008 as our chief investment officer, but Peter's mindset was much broader than just raw investments, and he got a little bit ready to leave the investment area after a while, and as I was getting ready to start as CEO in 2011, he came to me, approached me with some ideas around a venture arm. It was very new at the time. There were a few of them out there, but not really related to insurance. And so we started small. I mean, we didn't dive in with huge numbers, but we started small, and we started with our venture group, and we had some early success. Shoutlet, which was a local company, was one of our first investments at that time, and we were lucky in that some of the early stuff that we did yielded really positive results. So people could then start to see what was possible. Things like Ring are certainly have been big home runs for us, but there's a lot of smaller ones that Dan works on that when you look at valuation, it's been great for us. And then that feeds back then into the mothership a little bit. You start to get success with some of these types of companies, and then we start to get board seats on some of these organizations, and then senior leaders start to see how that may impact the core business that we've got going on. One of the pillars that we've concentrated on was data and analytics in our venture portfolio. So, it's an insurance company is just perfect and ripe for having key technology moving back in. Chris Ray, I think Chris at Stanford right now. He was at UW, but he had a company that, and some of the technology moved its way back into the organization. So, this started in 2011 when it really wasn't real popular or mod to be having these venture, but we had some early success, and it created leaders' willingness to look at this as possible business solutions for us. We started a data science and analytics lab, which was right around that same time, where we started really getting deep into artificial intelligence and machine learning and software engineer types. And we've been able to grow that through an acquisition of Networked Insights. So we got more software engineers there. So all of this kind of mushroomed from some very basic ideas and really a lot of blocking and tackling right up front. Not thinking we're going to put $300 million into this, but starting small and really watching it closely and aligning ourselves with organizations that we thought were better than us and we could learn from.
Yeah, I think a couple of things I want to highlight in what you said. And one, Dan Reed came from the inside to run, right? So he was internal innovation, and then stepped out to run the venture arm. So again, you can find people within your own organizations that can do these things and do them well.
Exactly.
You've gotten technology that you've brought back in. Some of the Shoutlet technology came back into AmFam, right? So you've found value of letting it incubate outside, then to pull it back in. And then you've certainly gotten return, right? You've gotten the monetary return beyond just the return on opportunity that you talk about getting board seats and connectivity.
One thing that's really around that, Zach, that I think is really important is the mindset around venture work. Sometimes organizations or individuals think, well, I have this problem, so I have to go out and I have to find some innovation, put some money down on something to solve this problem that I have. And really that's a bit of, we were that way at first when we started, but the better way to think about it is to go out and to find really good innovation and then figure out how that fits with issues that you have internally. And that's a better way it has been a better way for us. It doesn't always get us the solution to a specific problem we have, but generally overall, it allows for more innovation to get inserted into the organization in different areas.
Mhm. I'm going to fast forward now to the pandemic. I think there's an expectation in business that as you grow, and AmFam certainly has grown in size and value, and certainly the amount of policies that you write, the number of employees that you have, it's just everything has grown a lot. And there's an expectation the bigger you get, the kind of more lumbering you get, the less nimble you are. But then early in the pandemic, AmFam moved quickly to, I would argue, solve some personal challenges. As a policyholder, I certainly appreciated it, which was there were 2.3 million checks that returned hundreds of millions of dollars really early on in the pandemic. And I was struck by how fast that happened, right? It happened very quickly. But so what was the genesis of that idea, and how was a company of your scale able to move so quickly in that moment, especially since everybody was going to be remote too?
Yeah, well, I think one basic tenet that we've been pushing at the organization, not just me, but even before me, has been the need for speed and the need for nimbleness. And I think if you talk to folks around American Family who've been around a while, they'll know that when we talk about the enemies of the business, it's time and perfection. And I think over the years, we've at times been held hostage to time and perfection. So this idea that we're going to move, we're going to probably make some mistakes. If we have sins, they're going to be sins of action. They're not going to be sins of inaction. And we'll deal with that, is probably gets to the core of your question of how is a large Fortune 300 company able to make this happen so quickly. It's a mindset like that where we're really expecting people to move quickly, and if they make mistakes, not to kill them for it. Mm-hmm. And I think the genesis of that, of the checks going out, were actually some executives in a hallway conversation early on, as we start like the first few days of things shutting down, where we saw miles driven drop significantly in 1 or 2 days, over a 1 or 2 day period. And, you start extrapolating that out and saying, if this happens over X number of months, claim costs go down, everything, you start to look at everything that gets impacted by it. So we early on then from that decided we were going to try to be the first out with recovery around that. And and we were the Friday before it happened on a Monday. We were planning on announcing, I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, and the Friday before we got some intel on one of our major competitors in Illinois, that they were going to be coming out on Monday with a program, and we usurped them and got it out Monday at 7 a.m. or something like that. And it included, hundreds of millions of dollars back to employees, some later on by discounts, but our earlier ones, $50 cash in your pocket, we're sending checks back. And there was a lot of talk about should it be on their bill or whatever. And our marketing folks said a check in a person's hand is going to have huge impact for us. And so we went the extra mile and we sent checks out to people. And it ended up, we've never had better retention in the history of our company than the last couple of years. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with how we handled the pandemic.
I think it might have been the ghost of Herman Whitwer too, right? So for the viewers, so Herman Whitwer was one of the founders of American Family. American Family used to be called Farmers Mutual. Farmers Mutual was built on essentially the same concept, right? Farmers don't drive as much, so they shouldn't pay as much.
Yep.
And so that became the genesis of what we now know as American Family. So it's like those executives in the hallway and the ghost of Herman Whitwer floating around, I guess.
I think it probably is.
That's right.
Ghost of Herman.
I want to move quickly through a couple here because I want to make sure we have time in the next 10 minutes or so. You were recognized as one of the most engaged Fortune 500 CEOs on Twitter. You've won awards for social media engagement. Was that planned, or it just sort of happened? Did you seize an
No,
opportunity that you saw? What was
just kind of happened. It happened as a result of reverse mentoring. I had we've done this at American Family for a long time, where executives get reverse mentored by people a couple layers down in the organization who have skills that are different than what we have. And I was not into the social media arena at all. And I had an intern who was reverse mentoring me and wanted to see if he could create a Twitter presence for me. And we kind of stumbled into it and realized that it created a really great dialogue between myself and people within the organization. I thought it would be something that I'd get a lot of engagement outside of the organization. Actually, it didn't end up being that much, but I was surprised at how many people within the organization, people who are on Twitter, would engage with me through Twitter. And there was some stuff, a person with an issue with a claim or whatever could connect with me right on Twitter, and then I could get it over to our claims area for resolve. So there was some of that as well, but it ended up being really a great tool for me. I didn't start out wanting to be any of that at all, but definitely see the advantages of it.
Yeah, and your Twitter handle, AmFam Jack, became kind of a trend, right? I see a lot of agents and a lot of employees who have AmFam something, right? AmFam first name, AmFam name of agency. So it's
yeah. I have one of my sons who's in college, and one of his buddies playing soccer had AmFam Cam, and so I guess it's even outside of American Family. But
I want to talk a little bit about you certainly your marketing increased, not just the marketing we talked about before, but the actual commercial advertising, and we've seen that in the insurance industry across the board. But I was struck by something a few months ago. I was watching TV, and Liberty Mutual ad comes on. They've got an emu, I think, or some kind of bird, and they're at a barbecue. They're talking about how they can't relax. They're always on. They're always thinking about insurance. And then like 20 minutes later, there's a Progressive ad on, and it's, all the Progressive white suited people are sitting on a beach talking about, finally, we have a day off, and then they can't stop talking about bundling. And then an ad comes on for AmFam, and it's a father talking about being present with his son and protecting their dreams and thinking about, the role he has as a father. Why? I mean, to me, I love the differentiation, but where did that come from? Where everybody else in the industry sort of seems to be leaning into like making light of it, and you guys lean right into family and protecting and what's important to you?
Well, Talisi Yancey was really key to that back in 2011 with the Dreams campaign, and that included things like our brand ambassador program, our content on our advertising, sports marketing. I mean, all of that's kind of wrapped in together. But I think early on, it was a recognition that the space is just so cluttered with ads, and they're all trying to out humor each other, and they're actually really good. I mean, most of those ads are really good ads, but we were trying to find something that was different, and we found something that was authentic and genuine to our customer base, to potential customer base, and to our workforce. And that's the Dreams campaign. I would say, we've toyed with, I think, some of the humor and adjusting, but now as time goes on and we've acquired other companies, we do a lot of insurance now through partnerships with those companies that you just mentioned. All three of those, Geico, Progressive, and Liberty Mutual, are strong partners of ours. Now our brand reflects something that a customer who's buying insurance sees, but it also reflects a brand of a partner that a partner wants to do business with. So we feel really good about the fact that we're authentic with Dreams, and it connects well with our partners as well. So whether it's the Costco relationship through American Family Connect, whether it's through a relationship with Geico or Progressive or Liberty Mutual or whoever, it's that advertisement, it fits against, I think, our core potential insurance buying public, but it also fits with the partners and how the partners want to perceive a partner that they have, a trusted partner that they have. So it creates kind of a dual purpose for us in that regard.
All right, let's talk a little bit less about AmFam and some more about you. Let's talk about, we've highlighted and detailed your leadership within the community. You, like I said, you coined that phrase "next normal" that we use a lot now. What do you think about the next normal for Madison? I mean, you've seen the economic trajectory of where we've gone over the last 10 years. 70,000 people have moved here. We are largely viewed nationally as a what's next innovation hub. What do you see for the future of Madison? What's your?
Oh man, I am so bullish. I am so bullish on Madison. The institutions that we've got here, Chambers is a piece of it, but the university, you've got great businesses here, Exact Sciences, one that you've mentioned, and Kevin, Judy, and Epic, and then thinking through the what we deal with a lot, which is climate and weather related issues, and thinking about where migration is going to happen within the United States over the next 10 to 20 years. And I think the Midwest and an area like Dane County and central Wisconsin is just prime for an influx of really great talent. And I think businesses are going to want to do business where there's water and where there's good talent and where there's where you don't have wildfires and you don't have hurricanes and earthquakes. You've got issues with tornado and straight line wind, but when you compare that to some of what's going on in the climate and the weather issues, I think over the next 25 years, we're a net magnet for a lot of things, and I'm really bullish on this area.
Succession's never easy, right? Especially the planning of it. It certainly helps when you have somebody talented like Bill Weststraight to come in behind you. I want to ask you what you told Bill as advice, but I am curious what Dave Anderson told you when you took over as CEO. What was his advice to you?
Dave Anderson told me to be myself. I mean, Dave and I are very different personalities, but we are very good friends. And there are things that Dave did as a leader that there's no way I could do because of my personality is so different. And there's things that I can do and get away with as a leader and be effective at, and that Dave wouldn't be able to do. So his advice to me was to be myself, and also to give me the grace to say, Dave was on the board for 5 years, but to say, I'm going to be over your shoulder a bit here, but I'm not going to do anything to cause you trouble. I'm here to help you. And I really think that's the same way when I look at Bill. Bill's got some strengths that, I mean, his operational prowess is unmatched. I mean, smart, and he really gets the business. So I think things like expenses and loss costs, and I mean, we're going to be, and how you pull an organization together that's now, many different, through acquisition, many different organizations, he's going to have great success there. So I think it's, understanding Bill's going to be different. He's going to do it his own way, and me giving him grace, just as I was given grace, and a gentle hand here and there, support and an ear to bend every once in a while, but really, for him to be himself and be comfortable in being himself. And I know he will be. He's already showing that.
All right. In our last 2 minutes, you said grace. I texted you on Father's Day and said, Happy Father's Day. You responded with a picture of you in Spain in front of a church, and said that you and Sarah had just hiked the Camino. How long have you been planning that? Where did that come from? What was the experience like? Just let's end on what was that journey like?
If any of you don't know what the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela is, you should look it up. We didn't do the whole thing, but we did about the last 90 miles of it over a 7-day period. And you hike with other pilgrims, and you end up at the cathedral in Northwest Spain. And it's just it's quite an experience. You're with other people from around the world who are all hiking. It's called the Trail of Tears. You typically walk it based on thinking through people that you've lost in your life and leaving little mementos around the way. So we've lost some folks in our life, and so we left things at different places around the way. But it's through the entire the entire Spanish countryside, a lot of sangria, a lot of paella, and a lot of friends and a lot of introspection as you're walking that many miles. So it was tremendous.
Great. Well, Jack, that brings us to time. I said when we started, when you and I before, when we were getting ready to log on, I know we're going to run out of time with all the questions I have and quite people in the audience, but you're just an amazing person. You're an amazing friend. You're an amazing leader. I'm just so appreciative of everything that you have given to this community and continue to give, things that you have given to me as far as knowledge and wisdom, and allowing me some insight into how you think. So thank you for that. I also want to thank everyone for attending and listening to this great conversation and getting a little more on the insight of how things happen within businesses and within leaders. Again, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Perkins Coie for their support of this program, and Baker Tilly and Easy Office Products. You can join us Thursday, July 21st for our next lunch update, where we will have our current Madison Common Council leaders, President Keith Thurman and Vice President Giles Curry. And Jack, thank you very much.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks, everybody.